The rain wasn't falling, it was attacking. Cold, sharp drops stung like needles against exposed skin, slicing through the thin layers of a worn-out hoodie that had seen better days, better years, better lives. Under a sagging tarp strung between two rusted bus stop poles, a 17-year-old curled tighter into himself, knees drawn to his chest, arms wrapped around his shins like they might hold him together. He wasn't sleeping, not really. Sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford when every rustle in the dark could mean danger. He was just resting his eyes, listening to the city breathe, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional shout from a late-night bar, the rhythmic drip-drip-drip of water pooling in a cracked gutter above him. He'd been on the streets for almost 3 years now. Not because he wanted to be, but because the system had chewed him up and spat him out like a piece of gum with no flavor left. His parents were gone. First his dad to a sudden heart attack, then his mom to grief that turned into something darker, something that made her forget to feed him, forget to come home, forget he even existed. After she disappeared for good, Child Services shuffled him through 3 different foster homes in 18 months. The last one, he ran from it. Not because it was the worst, though it came close, but because he finally understood. No one was coming to save him. If he wanted to survive, he'd have to do it alone. He learned fast. Where to find food after the grocery store tossed day-old bread. Which shelters had warm showers and didn't ask too many questions. How to spot a scam before it stole his last $5. He kept his head down, stayed quiet, moved when things felt off. Most people didn't see him, not really. To them, he was just part of the urban scenery, like a cracked sidewalk or a flickering streetlight. Invisible. And for a long time, that was okay. Invisibility kept him safe, but tonight the rain had other plans. Around 11:30 p.m., headlights cut through the downpour, slow and deliberate. A patrol car rolled to a stop just past the bus shelter, tires hissing on wet asphalt. The teen tensed. Cops usually drove right by. They didn't stop unless they wanted something or someone. The driver's door opened. Heavy boots hit the pavement. A tall officer stepped out, rain slicking his uniform, flashlight already in hand. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood there scanning the area like he was hunting for something small and guilty. "Hey," the officer finally called, voice sharp over the drumming rain. "You, get up." The teen didn't move right away. He'd learned that sudden movements made things worse. Slowly, carefully, he unfolded himself, standing on stiff legs. His sneakers were soaked through, squelching with every shift of weight. "What are you doing here?" the officer asked, stepping closer. His badge glinted under the streetlight. Sergeant Daniel Reeves, 20 years on the force, 3 commendations, a reputation for keeping order. "Just waiting for the rain to stop," the teen said, voice low but steady. He kept his hands visible, palms slightly open. "Rule number 1, never look threatening." "This is private property," Reeves said, though the bus stop was city-owned. "You're trespassing, loitering, probably stealing too." "I haven't taken anything," the teen replied. "I was sleeping." "Sleeping?" Reeves scoffed. "You think this is a hotel? You're causing a disturbance, scaring people." "There's no one here," the teen said, glancing around. The street was empty. "That's not for you to decide," Reeves snapped. He took another step forward, flashlight beam now fixed on the teen's face, blinding him. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." "Why?" the teen asked, heart starting to pound. "I didn't do anything." "Don't argue with me," Reeves barked. "You think I don't know your type?" "You're trouble. Always are." The teen hesitated. He knew what came next if he resisted, even just by standing still. But if he complied, he might end up in a cell with no way out, no ID, no one to call. He was stuck either way. "I'm not resisting," he said quickly. "I'll go. I'll leave right now." He took a small step back toward the sidewalk. That's when it happened. Reeves lunged. Not with words, not with warning, but with force. One hand grabbed the teen's arm, twisting it hard behind his back. The other shoved him face first into the wet concrete. Pain exploded in his cheek, his ribs, his shoulder. He gasped, the wind knocked out of him. "Don't you move," Reeves growled, knee pressing into his spine. "You think you can walk away from me?" "I wasn't," the teen tried to say, but his face was mashed into a puddle, rain and mud filling his mouth. Something hard struck his side, once, twice. A boot, then a fist. Each blow landed with brutal precision, not wild but controlled. Like this wasn't the first time. People passed by in cars, headlights sweeping over the scene, but no one stopped. No one ever did. The beating lasted less than a minute, but it felt like an hour. When Reeves finally yanked him up by the collar, the teen could barely stand. Blood trickled from his lip. His vision swam. "You're under arrest," Reeves said, voice calm now, almost bored. "Resisting arrest, assault on an officer, disorderly conduct." "But I didn't." The teen choked out. "Shut up," Reeves cut in, snapping cuffs onto his wrists. Too tight, biting into his skin. "You'll get what you deserve." He was shoved into the back of the patrol car, wet and shivering, pain radiating through his body. As the car pulled away, he caught a glimpse of the bus stop in the rearview mirror, the tarp flapping in the wind. His few belongings left behind: a half-eaten granola bar, a water bottle, a notebook filled with sketches of birds he'd seen from rooftops. At the precinct, things moved fast. No phone call, no lawyer. Just a cold holding cell and a clipboard with a form he couldn't read through blurred eyes. They took his statement, what little he could give, and filed it away like trash. By morning, he was released with a citation and a warning. "Don't come back downtown." He walked out into gray daylight, bruised, hungry, and alone. But something had changed inside him. It wasn't just the pain. It was the injustice of it, the sheer unfairness of being punished for existing, for breathing in the wrong place at the wrong time. He made his way to the county hospital, more out of instinct than hope. A nurse took one look at his swollen eye and cracked ribs and called social services. Again. But this time he refused to give his name. He knew how that script ended. More forms, more questions, more promises that led nowhere. Instead, he sat in the waiting room for hours, watching the clock, until the pain became a dull roar he could ignore. Then he left. Back on the streets, he found a quiet corner behind a closed laundromat. He checked his pockets. Miraculously, his old smartwatch was still there. It was a hand-me-down from a volunteer at a youth shelter months ago. "It tracks your steps," she'd said with a kind smile. "Maybe it'll help you feel less alone." He'd kept it charged, mostly out of habit. It didn't do much, but it had a tiny camera and mic, something he'd forgotten about until now. With trembling fingers, he tapped the screen, scrolled through the files, and there it was last night, 7:37 p.m. He pressed play. The video was shaky, dark, but clear enough. Rain. The bus stop. His own voice, small and tired. Then Reeves's voice, cold, angry. The shove, the fall. The boots. The curses. Every second of it recorded from his wrist. He watched it 3 times. Each time his hands shook less. His breathing slowed, not from fear, but from something new. Something like power. He wasn't just a kid on the street anymore. He had proof, but proof meant nothing if no one believed him. And who would? He was nobody. Just another faceless teen the world had forgotten. Still, he couldn't unsee what he'd seen. Couldn't unfeel what he'd felt. And he knew deep in his gut that if he stayed silent, Reeves would do it again. To someone else. Maybe someone who wouldn't survive it. So he made a decision right there, sitting on wet cardboard behind a laundromat, rain still dripping from the awning above. He would speak up, not loudly. Not dramatically, but clearly, truthfully, he didn't know how yet. Didn't know who to trust, but he'd find a way, because for the first time in years he wasn't just surviving, he was fighting back. And that changed everything. The days after the beating blurred together like wet paint. Every step sent a jolt through the teen's ribs. His face was a patchwork of bruises. Purple fading to yellow around one eye, a split lip that stung when he ate. He moved slower now, more carefully, scanning every street corner, every passing patrol car. The city felt different. Not just cold or indifferent, but dangerous in a new personal way. Before, the streets were hard but predictable. Now every uniform, every siren, carried the weight of what had happened under that bus stop. He kept the smartwatch hidden, tucked inside a sock in his backpack. He didn't dare look at the footage again, not yet. It was too real, too raw, but he couldn't forget it either. It played in his head like a broken record. The shove, the boots, the voice saying, "You'll get what you deserve." He needed help. Real help. Not just a meal or a blanket, but someone who could make people listen. But who? Shelters were full of kind people, sure, but they were stretched thin, dealing with crises every hour. Cops? No. Not after what happened. Lawyers cost money he didn't have. And even if he found one, why would they believe him? He was just a kid with no address, no ID, no one to vouch for him. Still, he kept his eyes open, listened, watched. One afternoon, while waiting in line for a free lunch at a downtown outreach center, he overheard two volunteers talking. One mentioned a public defender who'd taken on a case against a traffic officer who'd falsified reports. She didn't back down, the volunteer said, even when the department tried to bury it. That night, huddled under a bridge with a borrowed library book on legal rights open in his lap, he made a plan. He'd go to the courthouse, find that lawyer, show her the video. It took him 3 days to work up the nerve. He washed his face in a gas station sink, smoothed his hoodie as best he could, and walked the 8 blocks to the county courthouse. He didn't go in the front door. Too many security guards, too many questions. Instead, he waited near the side entrance where attorneys came and went during lunch breaks. He spotted her by accident. She was walking fast, coffee in one hand, files in the other, talking into a headset. Late 30s, maybe. Sharp eyes, tired but focused. She wore a simple blazer. No fancy jewelry. Hair pulled back like she didn't have time for fuss. He recognized her from a flyer he'd seen at the shelter. Elena Martinez, public defender's office. He almost turned away. What if she ignored him? What if she called security? But then he remembered the video, the sound of his own muffled cry as the boot hit his ribs. He stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said, voice barely above a whisper. She stopped, looked at him, not with suspicion, not with pity, but with attention, like he was a person, not a problem. "Yes?" she asked, pulling out her earpiece. He swallowed. I need help. With something serious." She studied him for a long moment, noticed the fading bruise, the way he held his side, the careful way he stood. She didn't ask for his name, didn't ask if he was supposed to be here, just nodded. "Come with me," she said. She led him to a small interview room in the public defender's office. Bare walls, a table, 2 chairs. No cameras, no uniforms, just quiet. He sat down slowly, wincing. "You don't have to tell me everything right now," she said, sitting across from him. "But if you're in trouble, I want to help." "Are you safe?" He nodded. "For now." Then, after a long pause, he told her everything. The bus stop, the rain, the officer, the beating, the arrest that never led to charges, the release with a warning. He didn't cry, didn't shout, just spoke in a low, steady voice like he was reciting facts from a textbook. When he finished, she didn't interrupt. Didn't say, "I believe you," right away. That would have felt fake. Instead, she asked questions. Specific ones. What time? What did the officer say exactly? Did anyone see it? Was there video? That's when he hesitated. I might have something," he said. He reached into his backpack, pulled out the smartwatch. His hand shook a little as he powered it on. He hadn't shown this to anyone. Not even himself, not since that first night. He played the clip. The room went silent except for the sound of rain on the courthouse windows, oddly like that night. She watched the whole thing without moving. When it ended, she closed her eyes for a second, then opened them sharp and clear. "This is real?" she asked. "Yes. Did you edit it?" "No, it's exactly what happened." She leaned forward. "Do you understand what you have here? This isn't just evidence. It's a weapon. And once you use it, there's no taking it back." He nodded. "I know. Why come to me?" she asked gently. "There are other lawyers. Private ones." "Because you took that traffic cop case," he said. "And because you didn't look at me like I was lying." She gave a small, tired smile. "Most people don't lie about things like this. They just stay quiet." They talked for over an hour. She explained the legal process, how hard it would be, how the police union would fight back, how the system often protects its own. She didn't sugarcoat it, but she also didn't say no. "I'll look into it," she said finally, "but I need your trust. And your patience. This won't be fast." He agreed. Over the next week, she visited him at the youth shelter where he'd been staying, on his terms, in a quiet corner of the common room. She brought him clean clothes, a prepaid phone, and a notebook. "Write down everything you remember," she said. Dates, times, what you were wearing. Even small things, he did. Every night by flashlight, he filled pages. The smell of the rain, the color of the officer's boots, the exact words used. He even drew a rough map of the bus stop area. Meanwhile, she dug into the officer's record. On paper, he was a model cop. Commendations, community outreach, clean disciplinary file. But Elena knew better than to trust paper. She called in favors, talked to retired officers, checked internal affairs logs that weren't public. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Complaints always dismissed. Use of force reports just under the threshold for review. Witnesses who later changed their minds. Then she found it. A security camera from the bodega across the street from the bus stop. The owner, an older man who'd lived in the neighborhood for 30 years, remembered the night. "I saw the whole thing," he told her. "But I didn't call anyone. What good would it do? They'd just say I got it wrong." But he still had the footage. It was grainy, black and white, shot from a high angle. It showed the teen sitting quietly, then the patrol car arriving, then the shove, the fall, the kicks. It didn't have sound, but the violence was clear. Elena's heart raced. 2 pieces of evidence, from 2 different sources. That was rare. That was powerful. But when she filed a formal complaint with the Police Oversight Board, the response was swift and chilling. Within 48 hours, the teen noticed changes. A man in a dark sedan parked near the shelter for 2 nights straight. His usual spot at the soup kitchen was suddenly full. A staff member pulled him aside and said, "Be careful who you talk to. People are asking questions." Worse, someone had broken into his locker at the shelter and gone through his things. Nothing was stolen, but his notebook was missing a page. The one where he'd written the officer's badge number. He told Elena. She didn't panic. But her face went tight. "They're scared," she said. "That means we're getting close." She moved him to a different shelter, one farther from downtown, less known. She also contacted a civil rights nonprofit that agreed to provide legal backup and media support if needed. But she warned him, "Once this goes public, your life won't be yours anymore. Reporters will dig. People will doubt you. Some will call you a liar, a troublemaker, worse." "I know," he said. "But if I don't do this, who will?" "He'll do it again, to someone else." She looked at him then, not as a case, but as a person who'd seen too much too young, yet still chose to stand up. "Okay," she said. "Then we do it right. We build a case so solid they can't ignore it." She arranged for a forensic tech to verify the smartwatch footage, checking timestamps, metadata, signs of editing. The results came back clean, authentic, unaltered, recorded in real time. She also subpoenaed the officer's body cam. Officially, he claimed it malfunctioned that night. But the department's log showed it was turned off manually at 11:32 p.m., 5 minutes before the incident. That was a red flag. Big one. Still, the police union issued a statement calling the teen's claims baseless and an attempt to smear a dedicated officer. Local news picked it up, but framed it as allegations with no proof. Comment sections filled with people saying things like, "Oh, why was he even there?" And "Cops have a hard job." The teen read some of it, then stopped. It hurt, but he refused to let it break him. One evening, as he sat on a bench outside the new shelter, watching pigeons fight over a crust of bread, Elena joined him. "You holding up?" she asked. He nodded. "It's weird. I used to feel invisible. Now I feel watched, like everyone's waiting for me to mess up." "That's the system," she said quietly. "It tries to make you doubt yourself. But truth doesn't need popularity. It just needs to be true." He looked at her. "Do you think we have a chance?" "I think we have proof," she said. And in a courtroom, proof matters more than opinions. She told him they were filing a civil lawsuit, assault, false arrest, violation of civil rights. If the judge allowed it, the case would go to trial. And if it did, the world would see the footage. He thought about that. Not just the video, but what it represented. Not just his pain, but the pain of everyone who'd been silenced before him. "I'm ready," he said. She didn't smile, but she put a hand on his shoulder, brief, firm. "Then let's get to work." Over the next few weeks, they prepared. He practiced testifying, learned courtroom rules, rehearsed answers to tough questions. Elena warned him the defense would try to paint him as aggressive, dishonest, looking for money. "Don't take the bait," she said. "Just tell the truth, calmly, clearly." He did. And through it all, he held on to one thought. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about showing people that even the smallest voice, especially the smallest voice, deserves to be heard. The day the judge ruled the smartwatch footage admissible as evidence, the teen didn't cheer. He just sat very still, staring out the window of the legal aid office. For the first time in years, he felt something he almost didn't recognize. Hope, not the loud, flashy kind, but the quiet, stubborn kind, the kind that grows in the dark, like a seed pushing through concrete. And that was enough. The moment the judge said the smartwatch footage could be used in court, it felt like a door had cracked open, just a sliver, but enough to let in light. But that light also brought heat and pressure and eyes, lots of eyes. Almost overnight, the teen went from being invisible to being watched. Not in the way he'd been watched before, ignored, overlooked, but in a new, sharper way. People started recognizing him on the street. Some nodded with quiet respect. Others stared like he was a ghost. A few muttered things under their breath as they passed. He kept his head down, stuck to his routine. But the world around him had shifted, and he could feel it in his bones. His lawyer, let's just call her the public defender, because that's what she was at heart, told him to expect pushback. They won't go down without a fight, she said one afternoon as they sat in a quiet corner of the legal aid office, rain tapping against the window again, like it remembered what happened. The system protects its own. Always has. She wasn't wrong. It started small. A social worker at the shelter pulled him aside and said, "Be careful. Someone called asking about you. Said they were from Concerned Citizens." Then, his usual spot at the free lunch line was suddenly reserved. Then the prepaid phone she'd given him started getting strange calls. No one on the other end, just breathing. He stopped answering unknown numbers. Then came the rumors. Someone told a reporter that the teen had a history of violence. Another claimed he'd been caught stealing from a convenience store weeks before the incident. A local blog posted a blurry photo of him, taken from who knows where, and labeled him a career troublemaker. None of it was true. But it didn't have to be. Lies spread faster than facts, especially when they fit a story people wanted to believe. The public defender showed him the articles. "This is their playbook," she said, voice steady but tight. "Smear the victim so the truth gets lost in the noise." He read the comments online once. Just once. Words like liar, scammer, waste of taxpayer money. One said, if he didn't want trouble, he shouldn't sleep on the streets. That one stuck with him. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because it missed the point entirely. He hadn't asked for any of this. He'd just been trying to stay dry. He stopped reading after that, but the pressure wasn't just online. It was real, physical. One evening, as he walked back from the library where he'd been studying for his GED, he noticed a car slow down as it passed. Dark sedan, tinted windows. It circled the block twice. He ducked into a laundromat, waited 10 minutes, then took a different route home. He didn't tell anyone at first. Didn't want to seem paranoid. But when it happened again 2 nights later, he called the public defender. She didn't scold him for being scared. She listened. Then she made a call. The next day, a soft-spoken woman from a civil rights group met him at the shelter. She gave him safety tips. Vary your routes, don't post your location, trust your gut. She also arranged for him to stay in a temporary safe house, a small apartment above a bookstore, owned by a retired teacher who believed in doing what's right. It was quiet there. No sirens, no shouting, just the smell of old paper and coffee. For the first time in weeks, he slept through the night, but even in safety, the weight pressed down. He missed the rhythm of the streets, the predictability of survival. Now everything felt uncertain. Would the trial even happen? Would anyone believe him? What if the footage wasn't enough? He asked the public defender that one night over takeout noodles in the safe house kitchen. She set her fork down. "Truth isn't about being believed," she said. "It's about being true. You know what happened. I know what happened. And soon a courtroom will know. That's all we can control." He nodded, but doubt still whispered in his ear. Then came the witnesses. Or rather, the lack of them. 2 people who'd been near the bus stop that night had given statements to the police right after the incident. One was a night shift nurse walking home. The other was a delivery driver waiting at a red light. Both had described seeing an officer shove a teen to the ground for no reason. But when the public defender tracked them down for trial prep, both had changed their stories. The nurse said she must have misunderstood what she saw. "It was raining," she told the lawyer over the phone, voice shaky. "I was tired. Maybe he was resisting." The delivery driver flat out refused to talk. "I've got a family," he said. "I can't get involved." The public defender didn't push. She just hung up and sat quietly for a long time. Later, she told the teen, "They're scared. And I don't blame them. But it makes our job harder," he understood. Fear was something he knew well. But it still stung, like being abandoned all over again. Even some of the public defender's own colleagues started giving her sideways looks. One pulled her aside in the courthouse hallway and said, "You sure about this case? Reeves has friends in high places. This could hurt your career." She just looked at him and said, "Then maybe my career needed hurting." She never told the teen that part, but he saw the tired lines around her eyes, the way she sometimes rubbed her temples like her head ached from holding up too much. He knew she was fighting battles he couldn't see. One afternoon, while reviewing trial notes, he asked her, "Why are you doing this?" "You could have taken an easier case," she paused. Looked out the window at a pigeon pecking at a crumb on the sidewalk. "Because someone has to," she said simply. "And because you didn't have to come forward. You could have stayed quiet, healed up, moved on. But you chose to speak up, not for yourself, but so it wouldn't happen to someone else. That kind of courage, it deserves to be protected." He didn't know what to say to that, so he just said, "Thank you." "No," she replied. "Thank you." As the trial date drew closer, the city started to feel like a pressure cooker. News vans parked outside the courthouse. Reporters asked the police department for comment daily. The union doubled down, calling the lawsuit a frivolous attack on law enforcement. A few officers were seen handing out flyers near the station that read, "Support our heroes, don't believe the lies." The teen saw one of those flyers taped to a bus stop. He didn't tear it down, just walked past, hands in his pockets, heart pounding. Then came the final blow. A week before jury selection, the public defender got a call from the judge's clerk. There'd been a motion from the defense to dismiss the case entirely. Their argument? The smartwatch footage was obtained illegally because the teen hadn't consented to recording a government official. It was a stretch, but in legal terms, it was enough to cause doubt. For 2 days, the teen barely ate. He paced the safe house apartment, replaying every second of that night in his head. Had he done something wrong by keeping the watch on? Was it his fault the system was twisting the truth? On the third day, the public defender showed up with coffee and a tired smile. "They lost," she said. "What?" The judge denied their motion. Said the footage was recorded in a public space, during an interaction that began without consent from you. You had every right to document what happened to you. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "But," she added, sitting down, "they're not done. They'll attack your character in court, say you're unreliable, say you provoked the officer, say the video is taken out of context. You need to be ready for that." "I am," he said, and for the first time he almost believed it. They spent the next few days drilling. She played the defense attorney, firing tough questions at him. "Isn't it true you've been arrested before?" "I was cited once for loitering. Never convicted." "Weren't you under the influence that night?" "No, I don't use drugs or alcohol." "Why didn't you run if you were scared?" "Because I didn't do anything wrong, and running makes you look guilty." He answered each one calmly, clearly, just like she'd taught him. One evening, as they wrapped up, he asked, "What if the jury doesn't believe me?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Then we'll appeal, and we'll keep going. But I've seen juries. I've seen how people react when they see truth with their own eyes. That footage, it's not just video. It's a mirror, and sometimes people can't look away." He thought about that, about mirrors, about how for so long no one saw him. Now they'd have to. The night before jury selection, he couldn't sleep. He sat by the window watching the city lights flicker in the distance. He thought about his parents, wondered if they'd be proud. He thought about all the kids still on the streets, scared to speak up. He thought about the officer, what he must be feeling now. Fear? Anger? Regret? He didn't hate him. Not exactly. He just wanted him to be held accountable. Not for revenge, but for balance. For fairness. Because if someone could do that to him and walk away untouched, then no one was really safe. Not truly. The next morning, he put on the only clean button-down shirt he owned, donated by the shelter, and met the public defender at the courthouse steps. Reporters swarmed them, cameras flashing. "Do you think you'll win?" One shouted. He didn't answer. Just walked beside his lawyer, eyes forward. Inside, the air was cool, quiet. The kind of quiet that hums with tension. Jury selection began. 12 strangers would decide his truth. As he sat in the courtroom, back straight, hands folded in his lap, he realized something. He wasn't the same kid who'd been shoved into the mud that rainy night. He was still scared, still tired, but he was also something else now. He was seen, and that more than anything gave him strength. The courtroom smelled like old wood and nervous sweat. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, casting a pale glow on the rows of polished benches, the judge's high bench, the jury box with its 12 empty chairs. The teen sat in the front row beside his lawyer, back straight, hands folded in his lap. He wore the same button-down shirt from jury selection, slightly wrinkled now, but clean. He'd washed his face 3 times that morning, combed his hair, and taken deep breaths in the courthouse bathroom until his hands stopped shaking. Outside, the city carried on, cars honking, people rushing to work. But in here, time moved differently, slower, heavier. The jury had been chosen 2 days earlier. 6 men, 6 women, all different ages, different faces, different lives. They'd listened to questions, answered honestly, or as honestly as strangers could, and now they sat together in a box, waiting to decide what was real and what wasn't. The officer, the one who'd done it, sat at the other table with his lawyer. He looked calm, confident even. He wore a crisp dress shirt, no uniform, but he still carried himself like someone used to being in charge. He didn't look over, didn't glance at the teen, just stared straight ahead like this was all routine, like he'd been here before. Maybe he had. The trial began with opening statements. The officer's lawyer stood first, a tall man with silver hair and a voice like smooth stone. He spoke slowly, carefully, painting a picture of a dedicated public servant, a man who'd spent 20 years protecting the city, who'd been falsely accused by someone with nothing to lose and everything to gain. He said the teen had resisted arrest, used aggressive language, and that the officer had acted within policy and with restraint. The teen listened, jaw tight. Every word felt like another shove. Then his lawyer stood. She didn't raise her voice, didn't gesture dramatically. She just walked to the center of the courtroom and spoke like she was telling a story to a friend. On a rainy night, she began, a 17-year-old was sleeping under a bus stop. He wasn't hurting anyone. He wasn't breaking any laws. He was just trying to stay dry. Then an officer approached him. Without warning, without cause, that officer attacked him, beat him, arrested him for crimes that never happened, and then lied about it. She paused, looked at the jury. But this isn't just about what one person says happened. This is about what we can all see, because that night something extraordinary occurred. The truth was recorded, not by a camera on a building, not by a witness across the street, but by the victim himself, on a small device on his wrist. A murmur rippled through the room. Reporters in the back leaned forward. "We will show you that footage," she said, "and when you see it, you'll understand. This isn't a case about he said, she said. It's about what really happened. And who has the courage to face it?" She sat down. The teen exhaled. For the first time, he felt like someone had told his story the right way, not as a problem, but as a person. The next 2 days were a blur of testimony. The bodega owner described what he saw from his security camera. A forensic expert confirmed the smartwatch footage hadn't been edited. A retired police sergeant, called by the defense, tried to argue that officers sometimes turn off body cams for privacy, but under cross-examination, admitted that doing so during an arrest was a serious violation. Then it was the teen's turn. His lawyer walked him through everything, where he'd been, what he'd been doing, what the officer said, what happened next. He spoke clearly, just like they'd practiced. He didn't cry, didn't get angry, just told the truth, plain and simple. The defense lawyer's cross-examination was sharp. "You've been homeless for years, correct?" "Yes." "You don't have a permanent address?" "No." "You've been cited by police before?" "Once, for sitting on a bench too long." "Isn't it possible you misunderstood the officer's commands that night?" "No, he didn't give any commands before he hit me." "Are you sure you didn't say something threatening?" I was half asleep. I asked why I was being arrested. The lawyer tried to twist his words to make him seem unreliable, angry, confused, but the teen stayed calm. He'd lived through worse than questions. When he stepped down from the witness stand, his legs felt weak, but his chest felt lighter. He'd done it. He'd spoken, and no one had silenced him. Then came the officer. He took the stand with his shoulders back, voice steady. He said the teen had shouted at him, refused to comply, lunged toward him. said he used minimal force to protect himself, said his body cam malfunctioned, a known issue with that model, said he'd followed protocol exactly. His lawyer played a short clip from the bodega footage, the part that showed the teen standing up, but cut off before the shove. "See," he said to the jury. My client approached calmly. The plaintiff stood aggressively, but the teen's lawyer was ready. "Your Honor," she said, "we'd like to play the full unedited bodega footage and the smartwatch footage in their entirety." The judge nodded. "Proceed." A screen lowered from the ceiling. The room went quiet. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. First, the bodega video played. Grainy, black and white, but clear enough. It showed the teen sitting, head down. The patrol car arriving. The officer stepping out. The teen standing slowly. Then the shove. The fall, the kicks, the cuffs. The whole thing silent but brutal. Gasps filled the room. A woman in the jury box covered her mouth. A reporter dropped his pen, then without pause, the smartwatch footage began. This one had sound, rain. Heavy breathing. The officer's voice. "You think this is a hotel?" The teen's quiet reply. "I was just waiting for the rain to stop, then turn around, I didn't do anything." Thud. A grunt of pain. "Don't you move." Thud, thud. "Resisting arrest, huh? You'll get what you deserve." The courtroom didn't just gasp this time, it erupted. A juror stood up, then sat back down quickly, face pale. Someone in the gallery whispered, "Oh my God." The judge rapped his gavel sharply. "Order, order in the court." But the damage, no, the truth was already out. The officer, still on the witness stand, turned white. His hands, resting on the railing, began to tremble. He looked at his lawyer, who wouldn't meet his eyes. The teen didn't watch the screen. He watched the jury, saw their faces change, shock, anger, sadness. One man closed his eyes like he couldn't bear to see more. A woman wiped her cheek quickly. When the video ended, silence fell like a blanket, thick, heavy, final. The defense lawyer stood, but his voice cracked when he spoke. "Your Honor, we request a recess." "Granted," the judge said. "Court will reconvene in 1 hour." As people filed out, the teen stayed seated. His lawyer put a hand on his arm. "You okay?" He nodded. But inside something was breaking open, not in a bad way. Like a dam giving way after holding back too much for too long. In the hallway, reporters swarmed, but bailiffs held them back. Strangers looked at him, not with pity, not with suspicion, but with something like awe. Or shame, maybe both. During the break, the officer's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea, but the public defender refused. "This goes to the jury," she said. "They've seen it. They know." When court resumed, the defense barely spoke during closing arguments. Their case had collapsed under the weight of the footage. The officer's lawyer mumbled something about context and stress of the job, but it sounded hollow, desperate. The public defender stood again. This time she didn't need to say much. "You've seen the truth," she told the jury. Not a story. Not an accusation. The actual moment recorded in real time. No one twisted it. No one edited it, it just is. And in that moment, a kid who asked for nothing but to be left alone was beaten for existing. She looked at each juror, one by one. "You don't have to guess what happened. You saw it. Now you get to decide what it means." The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When they returned, the courtroom was packed. Every seat filled. People stood in the back. Even the judge seemed to sit up straighter. The foreperson, a woman with kind eyes and gray hair, stood. "Have you reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor. On the count of assault under color of law, guilty. On the count of false arrest, guilty. On the count of filing a false police report, guilty." Each word landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. The officer didn't move, just stared at the floor, hands clenched. The teen didn't cheer, didn't cry. He just sat very still, feeling the weight of those words settle into his bones. Guilty. Not allegedly. Not maybe. Guilty. After the sentencing was announced, 5 years in prison, loss of pension, permanent removal from the force, the teen walked out of the courthouse with his lawyer. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but he kept walking. Halfway down the steps, he stopped, looked back at the building, not with fear, but with quiet resolve. For years, he'd been told he didn't matter, that his voice didn't count, that the system wasn't made for people like him. But today it had listened, and that changed everything. The days after the verdict didn't feel like victory. Not at first. They felt quiet. Too quiet. Like the world had been shouting for so long and now suddenly it had gone still. The teen walked the streets with his head up, but his shoulders still carried the weight of everything that had happened. Reporters stopped calling. Cameras stopped flashing. The news moved on to the next story, and he was left standing in the space between who he used to be and who he was becoming. He didn't go back to the shelter right away. Instead, he spent a few nights in the safe house above the bookstore, listening to the soft creak of floorboards and the distant hum of traffic. The retired teacher who owned the place brought him soup and never asked for anything in return. Just said, "You rest. You've earned it." But resting felt strange. For so long, survival had been his only job, finding food, staying safe, keeping moving. Now there was space, and space, he realized, was harder to fill than hunger. His lawyer checked in every few days, not as an attorney, but as a person. She'd sit at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and ask how he was really doing. One afternoon, she brought a thick envelope. "This came through the civil rights group," she said, sliding it across the table. "Housing assistance, full scholarship to finish your GED, counseling, job training, all approved." He stared at it like it might vanish. "Why would they do this?" "Because your case changed things," she said gently. "Not just for you. For a lot of people." She told him that after the footage went public, though it was never fully released online, only shown in court, 3 other complaints against the same officer surfaced. 2 from years ago, 1 from just last month. All had been buried. Now they were being reopened. The police department had launched an internal review of use of force policies. A city council member had proposed a new law requiring all body cams to be automatically activated during any police interaction. "And you," she said, "you're the reason any of this is happening." He didn't know what to say to that. He hadn't done it for praise. He'd done it because it was right. But hearing it out loud made his chest feel tight in a way that wasn't pain. He accepted the help. Not because he wanted to be rescued, but because he finally believed he deserved a chance. He moved into a small studio apartment paid for by the nonprofit. It had a real bed, a working stove, a window that opened to a view of rooftops and sky. The first night he lay awake listening to the silence, not the scary kind, but the peaceful kind. The kind that meant he was safe. He started GED classes at a community center. At first he sat in the back, arms crossed, expecting someone to tell him he didn't belong. But the teacher just handed him a notebook and said, "Everyone starts somewhere." He studied hard. Math was tough. Writing came easier. He'd filled so many notebooks with thoughts and sketches over the years that words felt like old friends. Around the same time, a youth outreach worker reached out. She ran a program for teens who'd experienced homelessness or trauma. "We could really use someone who's been through it," she said. Not as a client, as a mentor. He almost said no. Who was he to guide anyone? But then he remembered the kid he used to be. The one who thought no one would ever see him. If he could help even one person feel less alone, wasn't that worth trying? He said yes. His first session was nerve-wracking. He stood in front of a circle of wary faces, young people with guarded eyes and folded arms, just like he used to have. He didn't give a speech, didn't pretend to have all the answers. He just said, "I've been where you are, and I'm still figuring it out. But you're not invisible." "Not to me," one girl looked up. "Did it get better?" she asked quietly. He thought about it. Not all at once, but yeah, it got better. That was enough. As weeks turned into months, a new rhythm settled into his life. Mornings at GED class, afternoons volunteering, evenings cooking simple meals, pasta, beans, sometimes eggs if he was feeling fancy. He kept a journal again, but now it wasn't just about survival. It was about dreams. Small ones at first. Finish school. Get a job. Maybe go to community college. Big ones too. Speak at a city meeting. Help change the system that almost broke him. He still had bad days. Nights when the memory of boots on his ribs woke him up sweating. Days when a siren made his heart race. But now he had tools. He had people. He had a place to go. One Saturday, he visited the courthouse not for a hearing, but just to sit on the steps. The same steps where cameras had flashed and reporters had shouted. Now it was just a sunny afternoon. Tourists walked by. Pigeons pecked at crumbs. He watched a little kid chase bubbles blown by his mom and felt something warm in his chest. His lawyer found him there. She sat beside him without saying anything for a while. "You look different," she finally said. "How so?" "Lighter," he smiled a little. "I feel it." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then she said, "The department offered me a promotion last week. Head of a new accountability unit." "That's great," he said. "It is," she said. But I almost said no. Why? Because I was tired. Of fighting, of losing, of watching good people get crushed by a system that doesn't care. He nodded. He knew that feeling. "But then I remembered you," she said, turning to him, standing in that courtroom, not backing down. "Not even when everyone expected you to disappear. You reminded me why I do this." He looked at her, really looked, saw the lines around her eyes, the tiredness, but also the fire that hadn't gone out. "I didn't do it alone," he said. "No," she agreed, "but you started it." Later that week, he got a call from a local high school. A teacher had heard about his story and asked if he'd be willing to speak to a civics class. "Just 10 minutes, she said. "About standing up for what's right." He said yes. The day of the talk, he stood in front of 30 teenagers who looked bored at first, slouched in their chairs, scrolling on phones. He didn't blame them. He'd been there. He didn't show the footage, didn't dramatize anything. He just told them what happened in simple words, how he felt invisible, how he got hurt, how he almost stayed quiet, and why he chose not to. When he finished, the room was silent. Then one hand went up. "Weren't you scared?" a boy asked. "Every second," he said. "Then why do it?" "Because someone had to," he replied. "And if not me, who?" After class, 3 students came up to him. One said, "My brother got treated like that last year." No one believed him. Another said, "I want to be a lawyer now." The third just shook his hand and said, "Thank you." That night he wrote in his journal, "And today, I mattered to someone else." Months passed. Seasons changed. The teen turned 18. He passed his GED with honors, started a part-time job at a bike repair shop. Something about fixing things, making them work again, felt right. He still volunteered, still went to counseling, still had hard days, but they didn't define him anymore. One evening, as he walked home from work, he passed the old bus stop. The tarp was gone. The poles were rusted, but the bench had been replaced. He stopped for a moment, not with fear, but with something like peace. He wasn't that kid anymore. But he hadn't forgotten him. Back at his apartment, he opened his laptop. He'd been working on something for weeks, a letter to the city council co-written with the youth program, proposing better support for homeless teens, safe spaces, legal aid, mental health resources. Not just Band-Aids, real help. He hit send. Then he went to the window, looked out at the city lights and whispered, so softly no one could hear but himself, "They saw me." And for the first time in his life, he truly believed it. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was living. And that, more than anything, was the real victory.